we do with these best practices is we make the bulletins as engaging as possible so that we can reduce those drop-offs and maximize the number of people who make it all the way through the funnel. Each one of those steps in the funnel is a potential to lose somebody, and these best practices will help you to make that funnel a little bit more like a square. So getting into email writing best practices, Tammy, take me through here.
Get my unmute here. Sorry about that. So when creating messaging, there are things that are really key to remember. You want to know your audience, which is huge. You need to know your goals and use plain language. Those are three key pieces in creating messages. So get to know your audience. You should know everything about your audience before you start writing to them. Put yourself in your audience's shoes. What would you want to read about? First point is that know who you're writing to before you start writing, identifying why they're subscribed or what information they might be seeking. The second is use the words your audience uses. Familiarize yourself with how they speak by reading customer complaints, social media comments, speaking to folks in the community, etc. You want to write in a plain language for technical audiences, but you want to write in a technical language for technical and plain language for everybody else. Write to the user. Write in second person language by using you and speaking directly to the audience. I don't know, Zach, if you want to touch on those a little bit more or if they're pretty self-explanatory.
Pretty self-explanatory there. Okay. I think what we're talking about with plain language, we'll get into a little bit more soon.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Know your goals. Before you sit down to write your email, it's important to consider your goals. How do you hope this email work will contribute to your overall outreach strategy? Huge. What action do you want your audience to take? Keep these goals in mind when writing bulletins and make sure your audience is aware of the actions you want them to take. Each bulletin should advance a specific goal or feed into a larger campaign goals.
Yeah, and actually I do want to
okay.
just for a second, is that frequently when we get into the practice of writing emails and you get into sort of a weekly or a daily practice of it, it can become easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. And it's always a good idea just to remind yourself when you start every email, what is this particularly for? Why? What are the goals of this campaign? What are the goals of your larger organization? Why are you taking the time to write this email? That can just be really crystallizing for some of the things that we're going to talk about down the road when we talk about calls to action.
Plain language guidelines. The Plain Language Act requires federal agencies to employ clear government communication that the public can understand and use. Not only is it a law, it also increases the success of your email outreach because it is easier for your audience to digest and understand. To ensure you are writing your emails in plain language, follow these guidelines. Use commonly understandable words. Avoid government or corporate jargon. Use the fewest words necessary to get your point across and ensure there is no redundancy. Keep length of sentences at 20 words or under. When reading your writing, ask yourself, is this easy to consume? Is this easy to read quickly? Read your writing out loud. This will reveal redundancies, lack of transitions, and poor sentence structure. I'm always talking to myself.
One of the benefits of working from home is no one can call
you. You can go to the next one.
Thank you.
Yep.
So thank you. Yeah. So that's the three key things to keep in mind. With that foundation, we want to go into the actual elements of email before we get started discussing what the best practices are. We just want to take a little bit of a closer look and a refresher for people who joined our second training on what an anatomy of an email actually is. So first we have the from line here, and then a subject with a subject and a pre-header up top, and then the header. Sorry, here it is. The header, body, and footer of the email below all that. We've highlighted here some best practices that we are going to get into later. So the header here is usually an image or a logo, something that identifies the email. It's coming from a trusted sender. Your body is the main piece of the email. It usually includes an image, a strong headline, and that tells the reader what the email is all about, and some text with a call to action or CTA button that prompts the reader to do something specific and take a further action from the email. And the footer here down at the bottom usually has more information about who sent the email, why it is actually being sent to you in particular. It has contact info. It's sort of meta text about the email itself, who it comes from, that kind of thing. So when an email shows up in your inbox, the first information that you see is some of the most important. These are elements that are going to lead to someone clicking on your email or not. It's like a good book cover or a movie.
Somebody else was the host.
All right, I am showing recording on my end. Thank
Jamie? Anyway, I was saying that the subject line is like, it's the first thing that's going to attract someone to click on your email. You want to catch someone's attention and let them know that clicking on your email is going to be a good use of their time. So the from line here it is DC Fire and EMS, tells the reader that this is coming from a reputable source, someone they trust, something that they've signed up to see. The subject line should capture the reader's attention while also avoiding spam filter. Sorry, if you're not asking a question, can you mute, please? Thank you. Right, so we want to avoid spam filters and things that would be like having lots of exclamation points or typing in all caps, things that are like, you click here to change your life. I'm sure you've all seen lots of spam messages in your inbox before. Please, use your best judgment on that. You want to make sure that your subject line seems like it's coming from a legitimate person. The pre-header, number 3 here, is a bit of a teaser. If you don't include a pre-header, your email client will usually show just the first few words of the email itself. govDelivery allows you to control what that actually looks like, gives you another opportunity to put a little bit of teaser text that can compel a reader to click on the email. And always important to remember that successful engagement begins before your subscriber opens your message. You're not starting with the message yourself, you're starting with the, I always liken it to like a book cover. You're starting with that, that's the first level of engagement. Unrecognizable from lines, unclear subjects, or non-descriptive pre-headers will cause your audience to just ignore your message or just delete it or think that it's spam, and you're going to lose that engagement. So that's where you start. So how do we optimize that subject line? How do we know if the subject line is good? There are a few ways to go about it. First, ask yourself, is this something that I would click on? Again, like Tammy was saying, put yourself in the audience's shoes. Consider if it meets their needs. Is it something that they signed up to see? Is it something that they're interested in? Is it something that speaks to your audience in the way that they speak to themselves? Kind of run that by. A good way to test different options, once you've come up with a few different variables, is to use an online analyzer tool or by using the A/B testing feature that is in govDelivery. I like to use this. There's a lot of subject tools online. I like this one from CoSchedule. The URL is down there at the bottom. This is not a paid ad for CoSchedule. I just happen to like their product. It's very simple. You enter your subject line into the field here, and it will return a score based on a database of emails that they have that have like high engagement rates. And of course, this is not, this is just one database's opinion. It's not necessarily going to be the best thing, but it's a good gut check to see how can you make it a little bit more engaging. How can you increase your clickability of your subject line? What the subject line will spit, what the analyzer tool will spit out after you put in subject line is it'll kind of highlight some buzzy words that you've used that will help to increase open. It'll flag if you have any words that tend to decrease open. It'll give you an overall score. Here we can see that we use the words your and new, and those are words that tend to be associated with high open rates. So in a real scenario that we've actually worked with for the city of DC, there was a boil water advisory in effect for the residents of Ward 5. So the first, we brainstormed a few variations on the subject line. The first one we started with was a boil water advisory is in effect for residents of Ward 5, just sort of simple there. And then came up with a few different ideas of like what might be a good way to attract attention there. Does anyone want to guess which one of these 1 through 4 scored the highest? Seeing 4.
Yep, someone said 4.
And
3.
that is correct. It was so 1 and 4. Sorry, I went ahead. 1 and 4 were the ones that scored the highest, using words like alert really seemed to boost the score. And our original subject line, a boil water advisory is in effect for residents of Ward 5, was actually scored the lowest. So that is something that we want to keep in mind and make that change before we send this email. And that is just sort of an illustration that it's always good to get some more options, get some more opinions, and the ones that you think might be the best. It's always good to test it. Something else that we've noticed as another exercise, we noticed that in the DC Gov account, there are a lot of bulletins that include the word newsletter. It's an accurate word. It's a word that people, they signed up to get a newsletter, but it can start to feel a little samey. It can start to feel a little like, oh, which newsletter is this that's in my email at this one particular time, and get lost in an inbox. So we came up with a few variations for this particular August newsletter, just to kind of jazz it up just a little bit. And we ran them through our tool. And again, so which one of these, which one do you think maybe scored higher out of these 3?
You got some 3s and a 2 and a 3.
That is very interesting,
Mhm.
because turns out it was 1 and 2. I also liked number 3, but 1 and 2 actually came back a good deal higher than the original subject line. 3 is not bad, but that's 3 up at the top there at 61. But numbers 1 and 2 came back really much stronger. That word news really does boost engagement. So another way that we can test subject lines is to actually, sorry, and maybe pause there. Any questions so far? I feel like I've been going a little quickly, but any questions so far about subject lines or about from lines, creators, anything?
Zach, did you mention that Liz had said, I think the colon helps the eye?
I did not mention that, but that is absolutely
Okay.
true. I think that's absolutely correct. Is that breaking things up into a distinct chunks like that? I think that really does help. So once we have those variations here, we see that we have 2 variations here. Another way to test this would be to run an A/B test. A/B testing is when you you make a randomized experiment that compares 2 variables for optimal impact. You split your audience in half, send one subject line to one half and another subject line to another. The rest of the email stays the same. And then you look at your results, you can actually verify, did this subject line perform better than another subject line? And this is something that we covered a little bit in our 3rd training, if you want to get a little bit more information about that, but I'm just going to cover it quickly here too. So in this A/B test that we ran a few weeks ago, you want to be certain about what you're testing, so we always recommend that you write down your hypothesis. In this case, we hypothesized that a shorter, more direct subject line would lead to more opens than something that is a little bit longer and maybe a little bit more conversational, more familiar. So our subject line A is the longer one. We said, see what people are saying about Right Care Right Now. That's the Right Care Right Now clinics. And then subject line B, very short, very direct. See testimonials, see Right Care Right Now testimonials. We hypothesized that subject line B would generate more opens than subject line A. There are two different kinds of A/B test available to you in govDelivery. The first option is a 50-50 test, which divides your audience into two chunks. Chunk A gets subject line A, chunk B gets subject line B. And then after the entire thing is sent, you look at the results and you can compare. Option 2 is called a test and send, and that is where you divide your audience into 3 chunks essentially. And you first you do a 50-50 test to the first half of your audience. You get the results of that first half, and then you take the winner and send it to the remaining half. So it's kind of like a 50-50 test in miniature that then declares a winner and runs with that winner. That is generally more recommended for if you have like a very large audience, or if you are looking to if you're looking to kind of just run with something as you go. What we were doing was more of a controlled experiment. It was a smaller audience. We didn't want to break it up all that small. So we started with the 50-50 test. And then what we would do is take those learnings from the 50-50 test and apply them to our next email, as opposed to apply them to the same email. Please let me know if you have any questions about that, if that makes any sense. So our test, our 50-50 test, our 50-50 test actually determined that subject line A was the winner, that the longer, more conversational subject line was opened in emails much more often than the shorter, more direct email. So our hypothesis was incorrect, but the important thing is we learned something. And we can use this learning for our next email. We'll make sure that we continue to have that more conversational tone. So this is just a little bit about how you can use the tools of govDelivery to really nail those subject lines. It's always good to be testing with your subject lines. And I feel like I spent a lot of time on subject lines, but they're the first thing that your audience sees. And if they don't click on the subject line, then they're not going to see all the hard work that you put into your email. So it really is very important. That is subject lines. Moving on to pre-headers. The purpose of the pre-header is it supports the subject line. It gives a little bit more info. It teases a little bit. If you see the subject line and you're on the fence, then you see the pre-header and you're like, oh, okay, well, this looks kind of interesting. Here we have a few examples about how from actual emails that we've sent out for the DC government. And you can see that the pre-headers, we like to use call to actions in the pre-header. Strengthen your team, learn about DC, discover the benefits, things that say to the audience, here's what you'll get when you click on this. So this is a little exercise we want to run here. This email is something that we sent out. This is part of the education series for the governance guide. The email is promoting tips to create engaging emails. The CTA button is start reading. And we've got some things that you can run, some highlights here some highlights of what you'll get from the government guide as a little bit of a teaser to get you to click on that button you will be able to create, if you click on this button, you'll be able to create bulletins. You'll learn to manage your topics and categories, and you'll learn how to optimize your emails. So this is our email. Our subject line was 3 tips to create an engaging email. I would love to hear from the group. What do you think a good pre-header might be for this? We'll add it in.
You guys can feel free to just speak up too versus writing it in chat.
Yeah, shout it out. I'll tell you ours. The one that we actually ran with this one was learn about creating, managing, and optimizing your messages. I think some others might be something like, see, so we say 3 tips to create an engaging email. A pre-header might be start reading the governance guide and optimize your messages today, something like that. Something that, let's see, what did we say? Learn about creating, managing, and optimizing messages. Another pre-header might be,
Did you see boost your readership with better messages?
absolutely, that's a great one, Liz. Yeah. Increase email engagement with these 3 simple steps. Very nice. I love that one a lot. Yeah, so things like that. I would say that one thing you want to be aware of is repeating things from your subject line in your pre-header. You don't want to be redundant, but I think that increased email engagement with these 3 simple steps, I think that works really well. I think that's not too redundant. I think if you had said, here are 3 simple steps to increase your engaging email, it would read a little bit different, but I like the way that you said increase email engagement with these 3 simple steps. And I have realized that I can't really type because I'm on presentation mode, but I hope nobody
I get the drift.
Yeah, boost your readership with better messages. I think that's a really great one too, because what that one does is gives that value proposition back to the audience. It says, if you click on this, here's what you're going to get. Here's why it's useful to you. Great, fantastic. Thanks, everybody. So moving on to the actual body of the email, finally getting to the real email itself. Once your subscriber clicks on the email, you're going to want to make sure that they see an inviting email that is easy to read and it moves them forward towards your goal. So the first element to be aware of here is consistent branding. Here, having a recognizable logo or address helps to ensure the audience immediately recognizes your organization. govDelivery provides templates to help build your brand like this. We cover those more in detail in the second training, I think it was, but using those templates can help you really, it's reassuring when your audience clicks on the email and they see what they expect to see, helps them to get engaged and kind of get into the mindset of, I'm reading this email now. Using professional quality graphics and photos helps to make the email more engaging, more pleasing to the eye. Photos with faces in it, especially, we are as humans hardwired to recognize faces, most people are. Photos with 1 or 2 faces tend to grab the eye more than group photos. When somebody sees a group, they tend to kind of gloss over the whole thing. There's too much going on and they don't snag on one particular face. But if you use 1 face or 2 face, the eye tends to go right to it. We use buttons, call to action buttons, to highlight a clear CTA. It's the best way to guide subscribers to do something. Buttons, they break up the text with a bit of color. They really do guide the eye down from the face. Your eye catches on that bit of color and you move your eye down towards the email or down towards the rest of the body of the email. Using direct action verbs in the call to action really helps to prompt engagement, helps to prompt that action. Really does help, especially if you can make it something kind of punchy. Make this, find this. And finally, you want to make sure that you use clean, simple prose. Again, like we had said before, using that simple, plain language. This is really where that comes in. And it's not just the language, but the arrangement of the language too. You want to chunk that information out with subheadlines and bullets. You want to include a lot of white space in your email. It'll kind of make it feel a little bit more accessible. If you open an email and it's just a wall of text, that's a little scary. It feels like you're going to spend a lot of time. It feels like you have to really invest in reading it. But if you have things in bullets or in numbered lists, people are able to kind of skim over, they can understand what they're seeing, and then decide if they want to pay more attention to specific things. That's also why we use bold as well. In our numbered list here, your eye kind of picks up save time, establish trust, and better follow-up care, and then you make the decision to, oh, let me read more about them. So you don't, funny thing is, people don't really read every word, left, right, top to bottom. They kind of take in the whole of the email and then scan and then jump around, which is why we have those stepping stones of numbered lists and call to action buttons. So here's another look at here's another look at how we craft this kind of email. So what we have here is we started with a short, relevant headline. We have a lot to offer. It catches your attention. It makes you question, what do you have to offer? It kind of leads to more thinking about what we might have for you. Also, we have a lot to offer to you. There's a value proposition there. You're going to get something out of it if you read the rest of this email. We've kept this email to just essentially one paragraph and a numbered list, which is what we recommend. Keep those emails short. If you have like a longer story that you want to talk about, try writing just a short little teaser summary in the email itself, and then link that to a larger story either on your website, or you can build a landing page within govDelivery for that. But you want to keep the email itself shorter and a kind of a teaser thing. If you have the entire story within the email, you're less likely to see people make it all the way to the bottom of that. We have our numbered list here to spread out content. We have our images. They say it's a cliche, but they are in fact worth 1,000 words. Right here we see somebody in a medical clinic having a good time. And that is essentially the proposition here, which is that you can find a clinic and you can smile. It's simple, it's easy, but it works. And then you want to make sure that your email has a clear call to action in it. Here we have find my clinic. That is simple, direct, lets people know what they're going to get. Any questions so far? Again, feel free to shout them out if you don't want to chat. If you don't want to hit the chat button, feel free just to shout. So following up with that call to action, it really is, I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but it really is a very important element of your emails. In many ways, the entire goal of the email is to make people get interested enough so that they will click on that button. In this instance, this email was designed to get people to download the governance guide. The rest of the email, is all in support of that one goal, which is download this guide. So that button is really the main thing. So make sure the button is easy to find. Make sure it pops right out of your email. It's large, it's a different color. Give it some space around the text, make sure it's not crowded. Make sure that people really can see it right away. It's also a good idea to make the language on the button something concrete and specific. If you can say, download the guide, that is better than saying something like, learn more, or something that's a little more vague, like learn more, doesn't really tell the user what they're going to see on the other side of that button. Once they make the decision to leave their email browser, it's a big decision. It's like walking out of your home, you know, you're going into the wild, so you don't know what's going to be on the other side of that button. So it's good to tell people exactly what they're going to get. For something like download the guide, or you can also use like, you know, something that's maybe a little bit more hyped up. You know, get the info you need, or that's not great, but it's something that's like become a govDelivery wizard today. That's not great either, but you see what I'm getting at, right? Is that we want to include that value proposition. We want to tell people what they're going to get, and have that strong CTA. I think something that I've mentioned a couple of times in passing that I haven't really addressed is I like to use do this today in my calls to action. There is a benefit to including a sense of urgency in your calls to action. And this is probably not going to be in the button itself, because the button itself, your text should be pretty short. We generally recommend it being under 22 characters so that it shows up in on mobile devices and in lots of different email clients correctly. We recommend that being under 22 characters. So your actual button should be very short, but in your text, I like to include something that's like, you know, don't wait, do it now. Just something I like to do. So some other tips on how to create a strong call to action. Again, we use a commanding verb, something like download, something like register, find out, do it. Here's the command, right? As opposed to something like just the button could be DC Octo website, right? Or just it might just tell you what the landing page is, but that's not a call to action. That's not a command. You really want to make sure that you're telling people what to do. Make sure the text links to somewhere, and don't type out the full URL in your email. You want to, that's kind of off-putting to people. Make sure that that link is embedded within the button or within hyperlinked text within your email. Your CTAs should be easily identifiable on the page. So you really want to grab people's eyes with that. So that is the button, or use a bolded link that I think we can show here. Every time we say governance guide, it's highlighted. It's easy to spot. Every time we say governance guide, we want you to be able to click on the words governance guide and go see the governance guide. And then again, like we said earlier, you want to make sure that your end goal is always in your mind. What are you doing? What is the CTA? Does the CTA support your final goal? It's easy to get distracted by other things that you would like people to do that don't necessarily support that final goal. You want to keep your eye on the prize. And then finally, communicate the cost benefit. Give your audience a reason to take the desired action. Make sure that you are saying this is going to be worthwhile to you. Go ahead and click this button. You're going to like what you see. Right. So finally, a note on images. As we said before, you want these to be eye-catching. You want these to use faces or people in them, or have something that is visually arresting, like a really interesting image that people are interested in seeing. Use faces if you can. Avoid groups though. One or two faces work better than many faces. Also, we recommend avoiding clip art or things that look cheap or unprofessional. That generally is a turn off for subscribers. And then here's some technical aspects. Just make sure that you are, for govDelivery, you want to have a minimum of 72 DPI. You want to be using JPEG or PNG files, and make sure that those are the same width as your column. You don't want that to be clipped off or have kind of a weird T shape. Great. So that covers what we've got for email best practices. I want to pause here just a second. Again, any questions or anything we want to cover? Okay, I'm going to move on to SMS. On to SMS. So first, we need to say that before you go ahead with SMS alerts, make sure that you get permission from Octo to use those. You'll want to submit a request. They do cost a bit of extra money. There are a few more regulations around them. You'll want to make sure that you have permission from Octo before you send those. Submit a request to Mike or Liz with their addresses here on this slide, and include your business case for why you want to use SMS. The business case should include the name of your office, the number of subscribers you intend to contact, how you'll collect more numbers if you're going to be collecting more numbers, and how you intend to use the SMS. And then a representative from Octo will be in touch and work you through that. Liz, did you have anything to say about this? Sorry to put you on the spot. I just want to, if there's anything more about the permission structure you want to talk about?
No, that's correct. That's just because, as most people know, SMS is not free. So we have to make sure that how it's getting paid for.
Absolutely. Thank you. Once you do have that permission, some of the things you might use SMS for would be promoting an event, promoting an initiative, or increasing general awareness. People have their phones on them. There's a lot of different things you might use SMS for, but make sure you include that case in your request. So the components of an SMS, it's a lot simpler, obviously, than an email. You have your from address, which is actually within the body of the text. There's not like a separate field for a subject line or a from address. Here we have the subject line of that email that we had tested before, and a short URL that leads to the email version of this SMS. And generally, we recommend, if you are doing a SMS alongside an email, this is how we recommend to run that. Include who it's from, and then direct people to a website version of the larger email so that they can get all the same information. You're kind of condensing the email into kind of the subject line for the SMS, and then allowing them to click on the link, which brings them to a landing page where they can see the actual email. The way that we build something like this is with macros, which I think we covered in a previous training, either the first or second. Macros allow you to dynamically, I might be using that word wrong, but they allow you to insert information without having to type it over again. It just pulls the information from the govDelivery system into the text as it goes out. So the way you would actually build this text message in govDelivery is you would include your from address. You would actually type that out as text, and then include the subject macro, which would insert the subject line of your email, and a short URL macro, which would insert the URL for a landing page that has the body of an email on it. We say a short URL because there are only a certain number of characters allowed for you in a text message. Short URL condenses that to, I want to say, like 10 characters, and allows you to have a little bit more content in your email. Because when you are working with SMS, your the most notable thing about that is your character limits. SMS messages, they are limited to 160 characters. And that character limit includes things like your link there. So you'll want to make sure that you are staying within that character limit. Fortunately, govDelivery does include a character counter. If you go into when you're building your email in the advanced bulletin editor, go into the audience tab and find this text message box. There are, as you type, this counter will count down from 160 to let you know that you're staying within the bounds of the SMS limit. So what you can do here is in the audience tab, you can find this box, you compose your message, and that message can be just the subject line macro, or it can be whatever it is that you want your text message to be. And then make sure that that fits within the character count. If you click then from the editor, if you click the preview button, where you can see, it'll show you what your bulletin looks like. There's a tab on the right side that says wireless message. Click on that wireless message and you'll see what that wireless message looks like. It'll populate those subjects and things. And then when you decide to send your email, when you click send, that will your SMS will send right alongside the email bulletin. Just a quick note on this, which is that because the SMS goes through a wireless carrier, that carrier may add more characters to your message. Fortunately, this is something that just cannot be controlled. There's always risk that some characters may add more information to the text message, like it might just have like a little warning or something, or like a little alert, which may push it over the 160 character limit, in which case then it will not be sent at all. So it's always a good idea to leave yourself some space. Any questions on SMS messages? Other than that, if anyone has questions, please interrupt me. Generally, we recommend using your subject line as your SMS message, and sending people to that wireless link. One of the things about that is that if you use the short URL, if you use the URL to go to a landing page that includes the rest of your message, one, you get tracking for that. You can actually see who clicked the link. Jared, tell me if I'm right about that, aren't I? If you're still there.
But the messages are with the character limit.
Sorry, yeah. If you remind me, sorry, we have tracking on. If you click that short link, do we have tracking on who landed on that page?
Yeah, in the reporting, there's just a quick little report on if someone goes to the shared landing page. It's just a total number. There's really not much else on that, but yeah.
But you will get that tracking to see. Thank you very much, Jared.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see how many people visited that landing page, which can be really useful. And also, once they see the landing page, they'll get the full effect of the email that you wrote. They'll have all the reasons why they should do the next action. Click on your CTAs, they get the full effect of the email, which is what you want. Great, so that's SMS in a nutshell. Were there any questions about how that works? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. So just again, a quick refresher on how to. All of this information is in the governance guide, and this is available to you from the Office of the Chief Technology Officer website. And you could quick show how we get there. If you go to octo.dc.gov and you come up to this front page, if you go to agency support, and sorry, can people see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. There you can see the Octo website, Tammy.
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, if you go to agency support, development, training, and support here, and scroll down to connect to district data with web services, you can see the govDelivery user guide. It's right here. Click on there and you get the gov guide from there. And you can download that and share it with anyone. that's where that is. So that is our presentation today on best practices. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for listening. Are there any other questions? Anything you guys want to talk about? Anything that, anything you've come up with in the course of your email writing that you've had questions about, or?
I will also be sharing this video recording with Liz. So if you're interested in seeing a recording of it, you can reach out to her. She'll have that probably by this afternoon or for sure tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you
Thanks.
for joining us. And
Oh, we might have something. Hold on.
No, I was just saying thank you. This was a really silent crowd, so thank you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
have a wonderful afternoon. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.